I'm someone that has read already a lot of webtoons. I've made multiple videos talking about so many different series on the channel, like Unordinary, Jungle Juice, I Am the Villain, I Was the Final Boss, Mythic Item Attained. I have talked about considerably a lot of different stories, stuff I've dived into, and some I follow weekly every single time a new chapter comes out. And so, because of that, there is a pattern. There is themes with series kind of like I Was the Final Boss. When I take a look at this series, there is always a pattern to where a character starts off weak, or maybe they're really OP, one or the other, and they become the main character. And it follows this format of a power fantasy. And usually it's always a main lead male character. However, I decided to just, venture and look for more stuff to read, and I discovered this series called I Stole the First Ranker Soul. Now, this title, I'm going to be completely blunt here, it doesn't sound like anything unique. It doesn't sound like something that is breaking the norm or doing something incredibly different when you read that title. Because obviously the theme of, like, a character that's an underdog stealing the #1 ranker's power is kind of a common theme. It's actually kind of a cliche at this point. And so that title really doesn't do justice to what the series actually has to offer. Because when you actually dive into it, it automatically starts off very differently than how you would normally expect. And let's kind of show that. So basically, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, we actually have our main character that is a female lead. And that is already a core difference. Because once again, I want to point this out. Every time there is a power fantasy and a story about a character being, like, transported to a dungeon or starting off very weak, think of soul leveling, think of Omniscient Reader, etc., it's always a male character that is the lead. But having a female character as the lead is honestly something that is just very rare. I want to keep it real. I don't think I've actually ever read a story, like a power fantasy story, at least from WEBTOON, that actually has a female lead. I don't. Correct me if I'm wrong, if there's other ones out there, but I never have, especially like this type of setting. So it automatically was just like, okay, this is trying to be a little bit different, let's just see how this goes. So the very storyline, and once again, it does kind of follow a standard template, but as I always say, just because something is very cliche, or something follows a common theme, doesn't necessarily mean that it is bad. It comes down to the writer and how it's presented to the readers or the audience, if it's good or not. And that's up to you to decide if you read the series, but my personal perspective and how I view it, I actually think that this is a legitimately good start. And the female character is someone that legit just has a regular job. She just does paperwork, a desk job, and then she slips into a dungeon. And while she slipped into this dungeon, she's there for days trying to wonder what she could do, and she's just stuck. She has no idea. And she decides to just grab a random flower that's in front of her, and it gives her a skill. She does a forced awakening to where she has a gathering skill. And let's be honest here. It fits so in line because it's like, let's be honest here. Like, I think that there is a lot of people that like gathering. And I definitely am someone that loves to do side quest professions, etc. But it's something that is, like, not really presented very much within these type of stories. So having the female lead grabbing, like, a flower and then instantly gaining an ability of Gatherer, and then apparently her hidden skill with that is to make anything she gathers S tier. For instance, like, if she was to gather from a low-rank monster, like the worst, like, we're talking about, like, a slime or something, okay? And she was to gather from it after it's defeated, she would get an S-rank item, or whatever the best item she could possibly obtain from a slime is. And so when you think about that ability, at first glance, that doesn't seem like anything too powerful, because it's like, you have no combat capabilities. There isn't. There legitimately is no combat capabilities with that ability. But when you put this in perspective, you think about it, this is kind of like doing a challenge run. When you think of, like, playing different RPGs and stories and stuff, many people that play, like, let's say something like Dark Souls or Elden Ring, they do many different playthroughs of the same game with different challenges. Maybe someone will decide to be like, you know what, I'm going to do a playthrough with no armor. The next playthrough is like, you know what, I want to put the Calamity Ring on to take double damage. Or the next playthrough will be someone just wanting to use a bow. You get the point. There's always these challenge runs. And so what makes these stories really unique and separates them from each other is the actual starter abilities for the main character. And so for her having a gathering ability makes her already super different, because it's not a combat ability. She's not necessarily a necromancer either. She's just straight up like, she just gathers things. That's it. She's a looter. She just gathers anything around her, and it becomes like an S-tier grade quality item, so she can make easy money. Now, clearly what this means is if there is a monster that can drop armor or a weapon, she would get really powerful quickly. But the question is how would she get there to be able to do that? Because, you know, she doesn't have the strength. She has no stats. Literally, her class, she has no stats. 0 stats. The only way she could get stats is by, like, eating plants and stuff that give her temporary power-ups, which I think is really funny, because it also reminds me of some builds people do in RPG games, to where, like, they never upgrade or level up, but they buy all these expensive buffs and stuff, and they just drink all these potions back to back to be supercharged powerful to one-shot the final boss. So it's like, when you see this, it reminds me of that type of playstyle. I really like this. Like, I actually like the character and what ability she has, how she can actually gather stuff and all that. Now, getting into the actual core concept of what this story is about, because obviously people are going to be curious, like, okay, you told me what her ability is, you told me the basic template of the story. What is there else for me to really expect? Is this something that you would be interested in reading? Well, if we go into, like, the chapters and stuff, and, like, let's go to chapter 10, chapter 11, as you can see here, basically, our main female character, she got into a situation where she got put into a dungeon. The #1 ranker was there, and he had to kill the final boss of the dungeon to open up dungeon teleporters all around the dungeon for people can leave. And obviously she was still in this dungeon, and she was watching the entire fight as he was fighting the final boss by himself. And clearly, you know, he died. And so in, you know, I guess in goodwill, she wanted to bring his body with her to be able to have, like, a funeral service. Clearly, thanks to her ability of a gatherer, when she picked him up with that ability, she literally looted him as actual materials and resources, which is funny. It's legitimately funny. Like, it's just like, she turned him into materials. That's exactly what she did. So she got his soul stone, like an actual soul and a stone, and because of that, he is here in spiritual form. So technically he should be dead, but somehow she has his spirit. So the question now brings up, like, can she access his abilities? You know, is he just a spirit that can be an advisor? Can he ever go back to a regular body? There's so many questions, but I think it's legitimately interesting, because when I read the title, I want to point this out again. The title is I Stole the First Ranker's Soul. You assume from that title that the main female character is going to steal their ability. Now, this obviously could still happen, but that's what you assume. But clearly, by the way chapter 10 and 11 sets it up, is that that's not necessarily the case. It's just like, she stole a soul accidentally, and now he's just a ghost following her around, which is just, it has a simple, like, a little bit of a flair to it. It's funny. It actually is funny. It reminds me a lot of SSS Ranked Revival Hunter. I've reviewed that on the channel before as well. Really good series if you have never read that. But it reminds me a little bit of that, with, like, a spirit following our main female character around. So, the story overall, it does have a very good start. It does have, like, a different template. Like, it starts off similar, but has a different direction with it, with the abilities and stuff. And I think that is one of the big things that people are drawn to when they read these type of stories, is that, okay, how does the main character start? What ability do they have? Are they a necromancer? Are they a fire user, water user, etc.? Do they steal abilities? You get the point. So, I like it. And I hope that, you know, honestly, I get to see more series like this. I want to see more female leads in these type of stories, because it's interesting, different abilities and stuff, and seeing how a female character is written in the actual lead role for a webtoon, for a power fantasy. That sounds very cool to me. So, I'm going to wrap it up here, though. If you are interested in reading this story, I will have it linked in the description. You can check it out for yourself, and I would greatly appreciate it if you clicked on it and you read it, because I would like to talk to you guys about it. It's really good. But with that, though, be safe, everyone. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Chibi out.